Okay, so we've finished with the Pebeo paints. I've left them to dry for about a week just to make sure that they're not sticky anymore. If they are still sticky, you can, depending on how sticky they are, if they're like goopy and they come off with your finger, then you want to throw them away. But they shouldn't really do that. They might be slightly sticky to the touch, but they should have dried. So just leave them in an area to cure. It can take up to a week for that. So I've left these for a week just to make sure that they're nice and glossy, and I can run my finger over this no problem and it's perfectly fine. So you can see that they've changed quite a bit since the last time we saw them. This one has had some of the cells open up over here. We've got one or two down here and over here. And you can see that the swirls have warped a little bit, and you can see that this has curled just a tad. It's not too bad, it's not going to affect their design, but that is just something to keep in mind when using the Pebeo paints. Sometimes, depending on how old your paints are, they can curl your piece. And these ones are cured, so you can see that the two look completely different, even though we basically did the same thing with them. They can still be used as earrings, but you can't really get the same design twice. Same with these ones. You can see that the cells have opened up, and these ones' cells are a little bit larger than this one, so they're a little bit different. And these ones' cells are fairly large as well. But they look really nice. I'm quite happy with them. So now we want to move on to our sanding, because we want to make sure that they're nice and finished off. So you don't want to be sanding the backs, because if you have a look, we've got mica powders on the back. You only want to be sanding the sides. So I'll bring over my polishing papers, which is what I always use. And I'll just start sanding along the sides. And I can even take a nice big wad of them and then sand like this so that I don't have to hold it in my hands. I find that's easier. And then I'm just rotating this as I go, and this is why you want to wait for these to be fully cured. If they weren't fully cured, you'd maybe want to be a little bit more careful when doing this. But I'd say about a week should be enough to let them cure fully. Okay, and that will sand up that. Then you want to move on to your next grit, which in my case, so the lowest grit for me would be a 400, then I move up to a 600, and basically all the way up until I reach an 8000. And that will give me a nice finished sand, and then we can pop some Renaissance wax on the back, and then we can get to resining them. So you want to do this for all of your pendants and earrings, just to make sure that they're nicely finished. And this will get rid of any Pebeo paints that might have accidentally spilled. None of mine did spill, but if you did accidentally have some spills, this will clean it up just fine. Okay, so I'll do it with all of my beads, and then we can come back and pop some Renaissance wax on them. Okay, so I've sanded up the sides. Now we're ready to put a light layer of Renaissance wax on the backs and the sides. So I'll just move these aside, and I'm just going to be using this old polishing cloth, the back of it, and I'm going to be using Renaissance wax. So I'll just open that up, scoop a little bit out, or just dab a little bit onto my cloth actually, you don't need a lot. And close this up because you don't want it drying out, and it also isn't very pleasant smelling. And then I'll just dab a little bit onto the backs here, just because you don't want too much Renaissance wax on your bead. So there we are. Once you've got enough, then just gently rub it over. Okay. And then I go back to the ones that I dabbed. The reason I dabbed them was because I had quite a bit of Renaissance wax on my cloth, so I couldn't rub them yet, otherwise I'd have too much on my bead. So now I'll just dab the back, then buff it, and then don't forget to do your sides as well. And try not to get it on the front of your bead, because you're going to be putting resin on that to protect it. And so you don't really want to be getting a bunch of wax on there. Now just another thing, the reason I am putting resin onto the beads is because the Pebeo paint is not very strong. It gets nicked pretty easily, and especially if you're going to be using it in jewellery, it's going to be going through a bit of wear and tear, and so you don't really want it to just be on its own, because I can stick a nail in there and flick it off the bead. So you want to be protecting with something. So I'm going to be using resin to protect it. You need some sort of hard coating. So Varathane isn't going to work, Renaissance wax isn't going to work. You need something like resin. And that's just because otherwise it's not very well protected. Okay, so now we're ready to resin them. And so I'm going to be using ice resin. And now I usually use the 2-part bottles where you have to measure it out yourself. But Linda sent this in for me, which is it's a gadget that actually measures it out for you. So you can see the ice resin are in here in their 2 parts. And you just I'll show you how to open this in a minute. And then you push on the lever over here and you push it out, and it pushes it out into equal amounts. So you don't need to worry about measuring this. So you can get this off of Linda's Art Spot. It's a little expensive compared to the bottles which you have to measure out yourself, but it guarantees that you get a completely accurate measurement. So if any of you are having trouble with that, then you should get this and it will work just perfect. Okay, so what you do is you just move that around and then pull it out and save that, because that's the lid. Okay, and then you'll just let that go up. So you want the bubbles to come up to the surface and then gently squeeze. And I don't want too much. So I'm just moving a little bit at a time. Okay, and now the resin part is going to flow slower than the hardener. So don't worry about that. Okay, then you need to get this back into its spot and close it. Okay, so there you are. These 2 should be measured out perfectly now. So I'm going to bring over a skewer and I'm going to mix them up. Okay, and this means that you can work in smaller amounts. It means that you can be more accurate with how much you want, so you don't have any waste resin, which is good. Because with my other resin, I have to wait till I have a big batch of beads just to make sure that I don't waste any of my ice resin, because you have to measure out a minimum of 5 mils, because, well, at least that is with my measuring cup, because my measuring cup only measures, its lowest measurement is 2.5 mils, so 2.5 plus 2.5 equals 5 mils. So that's the minimum amount of ice resin that I can mix, which is sometimes too much. So this is good. So I probably pour just, let's have a look. I'd probably say around 3.5 mils at a rough guess. So that's really good. Now you just want to mix it for about 5 minutes, just to make sure that it is fully mixed, because this is another big problem when it comes to these 2-part resins. You don't mix long enough. That's one of the biggest problems, and that is why it doesn't cure. So just spend a good amount of time. With these resins, you've got around half an hour to work with them, so spending around 5 minutes to mix them won't affect it at all. Especially in winter, you can have up to an hour to work with ice resin in winter, I've found. So it's really good. So just make sure that you mix it correctly, and then you can pour it onto beads. Okay, so it is fully mixed. So here it is. So I'm just having a look. If you can see any streaks after 5 minutes, continue mixing. But I can't see any streaks in here, so that's good. Okay, so I'll just put that off to the side, and we'll bring over our resining mat, and excuse the colour, the blue one hasn't arrived yet. And so this is what we're working on. I'm just going to tone this down for you so that it doesn't hurt your eyes as bad. And I'll bring over our first Pebeo paint pendant, and I'm just going to pop it up here and bring over the ice resin. And now when working with ice resin, you want to work in small amounts, a little bit at a time, just like we did with the Pebeo paints in the second part of this tutorial. You want to just add a little bit at a time, let it spread, and then add more when you need more, because otherwise it spills over the edge. Now the nice thing with the resin that we're using now, the gadget that measures out the resin, is if you don't have enough, you can just go back, pour enough so that you have more to work with. And there we are. I don't want a really high dome, so I'll pop that over there out of the way. Bring over the second one. And so basically it's not going to add much more shine than on the Pebeo paints than there already is, but it will just add that protective layer, and it will also give it a nice dome so that the piece doesn't look as flat, because the Pebeo paints, they don't dome, so they can look a little flat, and so it just brings your piece, it just gives it a little bit of a higher quality. So you can see that it doesn't use up much resin. Just make sure that you bring it to the edges, and I'm just checking from the side here to see if I've missed any areas. And I'll just continue doing that with all of the little bits. Okay, so I've just finished resining all of them. This one, because of the dome, the resin is going to slightly spill off of it, which is fine. So I've just left it over there, the resin spilling a little bit down that hole, but all of the other ones, there aren't any drips. So you can expect to have drips sometimes. Now this is a nice long tube that has a hole in the middle, down the middle, which means that I can blow out my air bubbles. I prefer to do it this way instead of using a torch, just because I have had some bad experiences with the torch by lighting my resin on fire. So I will not be using a torch. So I like to use this nice long one, because then I don't breathe in any resin fumes or anything. So just watch these and see if you can see the bubbles popping. So I hope that you saw that, but I'm blowing very lightly. I'm not going all over the place, because then that means that your resin will blow out all over the place. So just blow very lightly, and the resin and the bubbles should come out. And there we are, that's all the bubbles gone. So then we will leave this to cure for about 24 hours, and then we can start turning it into jewellery. Okay, so here they are all finished. The resin has been curing for about 24 hours, and so we're now ready to use them. So this one I'm just going to keep the way it is, and I'm going to go pop it into my bead box for a later time. But what you can do with that is you can just take some sari ribbon and you can just wrap it around the top. It's a donuts are really easy to just pop a bit of cord on and then you can use it, but these are the ones that we want to focus on at the moment. So I'll just move these out of the way, and I'm going to bring over my hand drill, and I'm going to decide where the top of my earring should be, and I think I want it at the top of the purple bit. I'm just going to position my drill bit, and you always want to drill after the resin has been applied and cured. And now this is a push drill, which means that I don't have to drill, I don't have to turn it. There's a little mechanism that will turn the drill for me. Yeah. And then I like to just do it by hand the last little bit, just to make sure that I get it right. Now, that's super quick, super easy, and pretty tidy as well. And then I like to just go back and fill it in and just make sure that it's nice and neat. There we are. So there's that one, and we'll do the same for all the others as well. Okay, so they've all been drilled. Now we are ready to turn them into earrings. So I'll put these aside, and I'll bring over 2 jump rings. and we'll see if we can fit those through. If not, then we'll just use some head pins. So I'll open up that jump ring and we'll see if that's going to fit through. Just, sorry, I'm bringing that up to my face so you can't see. Sorry about that. Okay, so that does fit. So that needs to get closed up. And so I'll bring over another chain nose so that I can close that up. Yeah. Just wiggle it around, and then we want to position it into the hole so that the part of the jump ring that you can open is inside the hole, and that makes it more secure. Okay. Then we'll pop another jump ring through, and we'll bring over an ear wire. And we'll pop the earring wire on, and we'll close this up. Okay. And there's the earring. Looks quite nice, and the extra jump ring makes sure that it's able to move around and therefore catch the light and look better. And I like to go back to my ear wires and just make sure they're closed properly. And so I'll do the same for basically all of my beads over here. Okay, and so here they are all finished. I'm so happy with how they turned out. The resin has cured perfectly, so that was super easy. It's much easier than the way I usually do it, where I have to measure it out by hand. So if any of you want to get into using resin and only want to use a little bit, I highly recommend that, as it just makes this process so much easier. And you can see that even though the paints do technically have a gloss after they're baked, they do need to be protected, and this gives it such a lovely glossy dome, and it will add quality to your work. So I highly recommend using the ice resin, and you can get that off of Linda's Art Spot, and I'll provide a link to that in the links below. So these ones I am going to have on my Etsy shop, Jessama Design, and I'm going to go put those up now because I'm really happy with how they look, and I look forward to seeing what you guys make. Please do send me pictures, as I always enjoy seeing what you guys make, and you can send in your pictures on the website jessamatutorials.com. I'll have a link below this video to where you can send in your pictures, so please do that. And if you're interested in more complex projects every single month, please do visit my Etsy shop or my Polymer Clay membership on Patreon, and I post once every single month, and I have a whole bunch of tutorials on there that I'm sure you guys won't want to miss. And as always, I hope to see you in the next tutorial. Bye for now.